Consider this, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bale Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome back to the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I don't know if you were shocked, but a few weeks ago when a young Omaha area couple got lost in a snowstorm in Sarpy County and became disoriented and made phone calls to 911, and we found out after they froze to death that there were high levels of meth in their blood, and that some of the phone calls they made were not only frantic, but sometimes there were hallucinations and all kinds of things. I think a lot of us were just shocked that this happens to seemingly normal kids. This week on Consider This, we're going to talk about the problem of methamphetamine and how it does happen to normal people. And we've got some pretty abnormal, in a good way, kind of officers who are trying to fight a growing problem, growing a lot faster than we even like to know about, but we should know. I want to thank Captain John Kusser, who is a Sarpy County Sheriff's deputy. He's in charge of investigations, and at least some of them anyway, right?
Road Patrol.
Oh, Road Patrol, never mind. Well, that's pretty important. Yeah. And Officer Ted Green's with the Omaha Police Department, and he's been working. In fact, you two have worked together on occasion.
That's good.
I'm going to take, I don't know which one of you has been doing this longer, but I'm going to throw this to you,
sure.
Captain Kusser. You were talking about when we first started having problems with meth, and as a law enforcer, you were starting to run into it. Can you take us back and kind of give us a picture of how it's grown?
Well, back around 1996.
Now that's 8 years ago. Only 8 years ago.
Correct. We had started having conversation with the Drug Enforcement Agency and the officers here in Omaha, and U.S. Attorney General's office, and what they said that we were starting to see is that there could be this migration of methamphetamine and meth labs possibly coming towards Nebraska, and that that was a time that we should consider looking and getting some people trained and educated, as well as educating law enforcement in general of this problem that our neighboring states were seeing in much larger numbers.
What was your first gut reaction? Yeah, sure? Or were you starting to get the feel from, through the police pipeline that this was on the move?
Well, we had heard about, of course, meth labs. Probably received some training as far as, you may start seeing some of these chemicals, etc. But we really didn't experience, at least in the metro area at that time, any, if you want to say, labs, and they probably were in existence at that time, but we just needed and got a little bit more sophisticated training in that.
So the first year, how many, after you heard they were on the way, or they could be happening, and maybe they were already happening, but you didn't know it. And give me a picture of maybe how many we had and how many the states.
We started off with 2 in '98. First one I think was actually out in Alma, Nebraska, and we had 1 here in the metro area then.
2, and that was
2.
6 years, 6.5, 7 years ago.
Right.
And now, what was the last?
Our high count was 430 last year, I believe. We're at, and that last year would be 2003.
Total.
Yeah. And we're up exponentially that. The 2004, they're not quite yet with the complete numbers. But the last count that I have in September of last year, 2004, we were approaching 300 there already.
Now what we're dealing with is a drug that is problematic because it is a drug and it can do terrible things, which we can talk about. But this whole lab thing has compounded the potential for danger to people in a neighborhood, children. I mean, they're saying 35% of the meth labs, there's children around them.
Sure.
This is just sort of worse than I think my wildest imagination was when I was back in school here in the 60s when we were hearing about, a little grass here, a little LSD here. I mean, in a sense, although that was bad, it paled in comparison to the danger that exists.
They yearly we have to be recertified to be on the lab team, and in our last training, which was in September of last year. They've just conducted a study now involving these meth labs. There's entire law enforcement teams that have come down with cancer. They found that the chemicals do not dissipate years later. Up to 2 years, I believe, was the study. And 2 years later, they found these toxic chemicals along with meth in the furniture and carpets. And we do find kids in this. It's not a pleasant thing when we go into one of these meth labs and the way we're dressed. It's a bunch of Darth Vader type people. And to see the kids is pretty tough because it's scary to see 10 of those guys come through the door with guns, and kids are oblivious to it also. Medical studies and research have shown that kids are losing their ability to feel good from exposures in these labs.
That's one of the insidious things. I mean, we can go through the kind of things that you would notice if someone might be on meth, but one of the insidious things is we thought it was hard enough to do addiction work with cocaine and crack addicts, but evidently meth destroys literally the pleasure part of the brain.
Correct.
So if you're trying to get unaddicted and sort of feel good about yourself again and feel good about life off drugs, it's darn hard to get someone to feel, you know, what they call the natural highs.
Yeah, it's a terrible drug as far as that goes in the physical addictiveness that these people get after very short-term use is very difficult for them to go into treatment, successfully complete treatment, but a number of these people, once that's happened, the addiction is almost too great, and even after going through treatment, a number of people will go back into it.
Very high recidivism.
High recidivism for it. Ted will probably tell you, we have probably been in houses or where production or labs been where we've been more than once. And we will see those people, and we may have seen them 6, 7, 12 months earlier, happen to go back there again. And just the physical appearance, what happens to the body itself, what happens to these people in what I would consider a fairly short amount of time is really incredible to see.
Oh, I have seen people that were that I knew from an earlier time in my life who've become involved, unfortunately, with meth. They looked a million years older. They looked scattered. I mean, no focus. I mean, they were a shadow of the people they were. Unlike, I mean, I've known people that have done cocaine, and I know people have done a lot of grass, but it didn't deteriorate their entire body and mind. I mean, it's just everything's affected.
There's not a lot there. You know, that's when I first started the career. Crack was the big drug that came out, and being dates back. It's one of the first officers to buy crack cocaine undercover in Omaha. And that was real insidious, but I haven't seen anything. I mean, one of the street names is Satan's drug, and it is. And it's not the ability to destroy. A lot of the rumors, well, it doesn't make you feel good. It destroys the brain's ability to. It's not a street lore. It does. They're not going to feel good about themselves again.
Do all those normal things. Like, I mean, you have the 12-step program. What they really do is rebuild how you look at yourself, how you look at life. There's not a lot left in those parts of the brain to rebuild.
The natural high that somebody may get from fishing, camping, hunting, running, sports, billiards, swimming, exercise, whatever, is gone. The only thing that'll get them and make them feel good is meth. It's called the dopamine. Your dopamine, and that's what's destroyed the brain's ability to produce that.
Yeah, that's the thing you get when you run. You know, runners get that natural high.
Right.
The good drug that your body produces. So I think parts of Nebraska are not in denial. You've got a number of rural areas that have had more than their share of problems. Some more rural areas that are even close to Omaha that are little havens. So maybe there's not a lot of denial. In fact, there's even sort of a feeling of helplessness and hoping that their kids don't get you know, sucked into this net. I mean, that's the scary part. It's scary for anybody, but involved with this young couple, your folks, Sarpy County, and I think State Patrol did some investigation of where did this young couple get the meth that they had ingested somehow and the meth that was in the car, and they ended up making a couple of arrests in Kearney. A mother and a teenage son.
Sure, 2 generations.
I mean, that just, well, we all know that people, I say, how could a mother do that? But, you know, you're dealing with.
And that's not as uncommon as I think Ted will tell you too. The 2-generation families that are involved in this is, while sad, it's not what I would consider an uncommon thing. I mean, you know, we see it. We see that a lot. And that again sort of helps exacerbate this problem when you have, you know, kids and the parents are giving the direction for this too.
Or they might help them make it and then send them out to sell it.
That's correct.
I mean, all kinds of things. I think that we could go through a lot of the, and I hope kids are getting them in school, the things to recognize kids and the parents of people that might be on meth, and we can go on and on. But they say the rush is like 600 times the normal amount of dopamine and the other natural high enhancers in your body. I mean, I can't imagine that.
Feeling that good.
I mean.
And that's gone then. I mean, after your first use, your body can't produce.
Can never go that high again.
It can't. Unfortunately, it's one of the only drugs that it physically destroys the brain. I mean, it's physically doing the damage. It's not a hallucinant. It's a hallucination, but it's physically doing damage to the brain and your ability to recall basic information. And a lot of that, if you listen to the 911 tapes that Sarpy got, I'll use that in the training for the officers, because
and that
it's
is
very difficult.
So sad, but it's
is.
the best example, I think, for those that have never been around it or don't think that I mean, we had a kid that, you know, had sorority sisters at Creighton and a young guy, and when they showed the picture of him on TV that they were lost, they were, we didn't know at that time that these conversations, desperate and sometimes just seeing things that weren't there. And I mean, those are I've listened to almost all those tapes. They undo me, even though I knew in my mind things like that happened with that drug, but to hear those was one of the saddest, and for their parents, I mean, it was a double tragedy.
Sure. Yep.
It was just horrible, and there's a lot of tragedies going on in families because of this.
Well, that is one of the things, especially when you get into some of the levels that these kids had, is there's a psychosis that happens with it, and auditory and visual hallucinations are common with that, along with, you know, the problems with the body temperature and the ability to you know, sit still for any long periods of time.
Which might be part of the reason they weren't dressed properly, part of the reason they wouldn't stay in the truck, even though the truck had some problems, stay in a sheltered position. They weren't feeling cold at the time.
Right. And it was tragic to listen to those tapes, but I will tell you, and speaking with a couple of the school resource officers, and I hope that the conversation continues, but you know, one of the school resource officers came to me that works out there in Gretna and said a number of kids came up to him questioning him, because I think while those tapes were tragic and hard to listen to, it really was a more reality base for those kids, and when they heard that, it was a real thing. It's something to say, this is what can happen.
It's not
to
urban
you.
folklore or rural folklore.
Right.
It's
Right.
it's if they've never seen it and they're only imagining what it might be like.
Right, and that did generate a lot of conversations, at least in the schools with some of the kids.
Hopefully
there.
with parents, something good can come out of these extremely sad tapes.
It is hard to listen to it. The dispatchers on that, they need to be commended for the work that they did, because it is extremely difficult as you go through those tapes. That person that's high on meth is talking to you, and then it's not just these tapes, but in interviews that we've both done, you're trying to elicit information that's time sensitive in all types of crimes. And to pull that information out for the officers to do that do a lot more interviews, it's extremely difficult. And then to have this at 911 where you know it's life and death because of the weather, that person's communicating in a way that they feel, if you listen to the tapes, they're making sense to themselves, but
Sure.
not in reality.
One of the things, and it's a little off the subject, in listening to those tapes, and one of the things that was mentioned at the news conference that Sarpy County had involving a lot of the different people involved in this whole thing, was that I heard people on radio call-in shows and things saying, well, you know, they just kept asking them the same questions. Just as an aside, and my husband having been a firefighter, you cannot help people if you cannot get to them. So finding them sort of trumped everything else.
Exactly. I mean, we're in law enforcement. First thing is to save somebody's life, and that's, we'll worry about the drugs at a later
You can't
time.
send all the troops out or any rescue squad or anything to anybody if you don't know where
You
they
have to
are.
know where they're at.
So where does law enforcement go from here? They've done a lot of things. Statewide, there are, I call them little regions, but there's federal money that has been made available to sort of do what in the state?
Well, when Ted and I were on the meth clan lab team, basically started with 12 officers. I mean, the federal government came in, the first group of us, 12 of us, went and took our training down in Kansas City, came back, started doing the work. Obviously, as the years went along, 12 people weren't going to be able to do that. And I believe now in the state there's, I think, 302 officers that have been trained. So that part of it is good. And the training that's given, and now the ability to respond to these. But what we also forget is while we're responding to that, and it takes a number of officers to do this, there's a lot of training involved. You go out on one of these labs, you're out there for a good long period of time. But what you sort of don't see about that is, along with that, there's what I call the secondary crime that's going on because of this. The people that are using now need that drug more and more, so our burglaries go up, our armed robberies go up. Sarpy County, we had a homicide just a few months ago that was related to, you know, this drug and all part of that. So those secondary things are going on, along with you're trying to take care of, okay, let's address the labs.
Well, with the
let's
safety
address
of the
this
lab, the
outfit.
people that are
Correct.
involved, that are on the stuff or selling
Right.
the stuff. I mean, this is a multi-level thing. In fact, I have heard figures as high as 35% increases in crimes like burglary,
Sure.
theft, and
Real
all
easy.
kinds of things, fraud. Due to meth alone, depending on the community, but it can be extraordinarily high.
We're in a metro area here. We have resources. The captain and I we're on there's 9 counties that we respond to on this lab team. Multi-agencies are, all law enforcement agencies are involved with it that you can think of in the metro. You get outside of the metro area, Lincoln, Omaha, you start getting down to smaller towns and you have the state patrol and maybe an officer or a sheriff's deputy. And it's taking, just on the lab part of it, not the drug part, it can take 10, 12 officers a complete shift to take apart one of these
Well, and there
things.
are other sort of groups that can respond to that, but you're talking about much larger geographical areas and a lot more places to hide these labs, and probably percentage-wise per population, more labs.
Yep.
So it's kind of a tough deal. I've noticed some people have weird hobbies. I collect all the news releases from the U.S. Attorney's Office and sort of follow trends. Gun possession and methamphetamine
Hand in
is
hand.
one of the major things, two of the major things that they're doing, based on the news releases that come out in terms of arrests and indictments and whatnot.
Sure.
Yep.
I mean, every other one I open, more than every other one has the word methamphetamine in the first line.
Well, I think Ted will tell you, and I'm not sure of the numbers, maybe Ted has that, but if you want to look at some good about what's going on, is I think that you'll find out that this region, or the HIDA region that covers our area, is very active. It has a good number of these cases that get prosecuted, which is very important. And there's good cases made, good response. And as far as this HIDTA region, I know we're one of the more productive ones as far as making the cases, getting the arrest, getting the convictions.
Now, the U.S. Attorney's Office prosecutes a lot of those. I know they do a lot of gun cases because the penalties are higher in federal court. Is it similar with this?
It is, yeah.
And so that would, you're upping the ante and maybe keeping people away from this for a while longer?
Right.
Is that the point?
Exactly.
I mean, it's tools that we have. Like the captain said, we've got, I mean, it's nationally recognized, our task force here, the Narcotics Task Force. And we all take great pride in that. And it's not just, it's the metro area. It's not just Omaha, it's not just Sarpy County, it's the metro area. And we've bridged the gap quite a bit in this, and jurisdictional boundaries, working together with one another, interagencies. So we use the tools that are available to us. Maybe it doesn't quite fit into federal prosecution, so we'll go to that county.
But you do the best
district.
Case scenario
we
where
use the best case scenario,
best.
and we have those tools available to us.
I will say, it's sad to say that one of the good things that's come out of the meth explosion, and probably guns, is the jurisdictional cooperation that is unprecedented, I think, in all the years that I've covered law enforcement. The turf becomes only land where crimes are committed,
Streets.
as opposed to, yeah.
That's all it is. I think that's a very true statement. There isn't too many things that I can't call up to Omaha Ted's office or Douglas County or any of the other law enforcement agencies, and if it comes down to we're looking at a lab situation, a particular drug situation, an investigation that has to happen. It sounds corny, but it really is just kind of like one family. It just happens to be the problem's over here right now, and let's go take care of that.
I've noticed a lot of fluidity of bodies, of personnel, between jurisdictions, where all jurisdictions are suffering from severe manpower shortages,
Absolutely.
especially given the economy the last few years. But it's like, this is a kind of a sacred trust that you all have, that it's as important. If it's important to you, then it's going to be important to them. I mean, I've just never seen this kind of cooperation.
It's it has come a long ways, and unfortunately, a lot of these smaller towns where the population isn't as great, they don't have those. They still have the old jurisdictional boundaries, and that's a tough road for the smaller communities to go on. I mean, they have the drug problem, and then they may have a jurisdictional problem.
And we
there's turf
have rural
battles.
areas in both your counties, so that you've got the expertise of both the rural and urban. We've got about 5 minutes left. I mean, there are about 10 states right now that are considering legislation to have pharmacists, convenience stores, whatever, keep track of the, like Sudafed, that has the pseudoephedrine in, which can be used to cook up. It's a vital ingredient in cooking up a batch of meth.
You have to have it. It's not a vital, and there's not an option. You have to start with that. And there's a lot of street lore with a lot of different chemicals in that, and that's exactly what it is street lore. The states that have done that, there is a current investigation. We have individuals here that we've arrested they came from 2 states away just to purchase those pills. So they travel quite a ways to get those pills. And I alluded to the fact earlier that this is, you mentioned community to raise or a community to go after drugs. This is a homegrown drug. The products that are used to buy this are bought right over the counter. And so we started Retail Watch, we started Drug Endangered Kids. We're getting all that, and the cooperation we've had from retail has been good. And it needs to even probably take a step farther than that.
And you were telling me it doesn't take a lot of, say, I don't mean to malign Pfizer and Sudafed, but that's the most well-known drug of its kind. There are all kinds of generics. It doesn't take a lot.
No.
Go
out. I think if you really want to get a batch going, a couple, 3 pill vials will get you started.
And that is so scary. Also, the scariness. I just talked to the people that are planning for ultimate disasters in our state, and they've recently put together a film, a burn situation for children, because there isn't a lot of pediatric triage kinds of training. It's ammonia. Somebody left some ammonia. Now, where does ammonia fit into this method?
Anhydrous ammonia.
Yeah.
Anhydrous, not the kind you
Right, not the
wash
kind around
with.
the house, yeah.
That's one of the methods used to cook methamphetamine. That's one of the chemicals that you need as a catalyst in there.
It's very dangerous.
Yeah.
That's one of the things we have to teach the street officers and everything to be very aware of, because these people will transport this stuff. They'll go to areas where they can tap a tank or something.
Yeah, a farmer's tank.
Farmer's
say.
tank or whatever, and they'll put them in containers that this stuff does not belong in, thermos bottles.
God never intended it to be in.
Correct. And these containers are open, or if they're opened by a child or something like that, they're open. The
Ammonia burns are god-awful.
They're terrible. The respiratory problems that happen with that, I mean, and it is instantaneous. I mean, you are in trouble then, right
The minute
then
you're
and there.
exposed.
You are, exactly.
We have just less than a couple of minutes. I'm going to ask each one of you, if you had the financial resources and the power, the wand, what would you do tomorrow to help at least make a dent in this?
I think we can't get enough education out there. I think the eyes and ears of the public are what help us. So many of our cases are made by people noticing something, calling us, the businesses that help us. And lastly, I would really concentrate on getting with the parents and saying, this is what this drug does. If you start seeing anything that's like this going on with your kids or in your household, this is what you need to be concerned about. That's what I would
And the
look
National
at.
Institute of Drug Abuse, the CDC, you can find this solid, good information many places on the internet. There's no excuse not to have it. What would you do?
I agree with the captain on the education, getting everybody involved. Retail, you're going to need enforcement, stiffer penalties, precise laws written about it. I mean, it is. It's whether we want our livelihood or not, and everybody needs to cooperate in some way, shape, or form, and to help us out. There's just so many of us to go around. So.
Well, and they say the youth is our future, and we're losing it as it is to leaving a state. It's terrible to lose it to drugs.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I ran out of time.
problem.
Captain John Cruiser and Officer Ted Green, thank you for joining us. Please get informed on this subject and check the websites out, or you can check our website out. We'll see you next week.
To view this edition of Consider This or past programs, visit our website at unotv.unomaha.edu. For comments or questions, call 402-554-2516 during regular business hours. Consider This is a production of UNO Television.